Welcome back to Crafty Kobold. It is I, Valdis, the craftiest of kobolds. Today we are going to paint a droid. Alright, I am going to paint one of these L0-LA Droids. This is the cheaper, like, toy one. This is what they look like out of the box. I have painted one before. Did a cyberpunk themed one. And we are going to paint another one. I did this one a few years ago. But yeah. Well, let's get started. First, we're going to have to disassemble her. Then, we have to sand down all the parts that we're going to paint. We coat those in a primer, and then we can do all the color detail and hand painting. And then we hit those again with a clear coat seal, and reassemble her, and she will be ready to go. So let's get going. So the disassembly is pretty easy. You're mostly just unscrewing a bunch of stuff. Not really a difficult one to get into. I have a lot of experience with Nerf blasters and other toys that I've modified, so pretty straightforward beginner project, honestly. Always helps if you have a magnet tray. Keep your screws organized so you don't lose them. This one in particular had really short wires. The other ones I've worked on, the wires were a little longer, so it gave me some extra space. This is probably the most difficult part of disassembling these, is the plastic housing that holds the main circuit board is just really tight on there, so you gotta really wiggle and pry it off of there, especially after you get the paint on. It'll be a lot more friction holding it in. Alright, so that is a disassembly. You can get her apart in about 8 minutes or so if the board doesn't want to stick. So we're going to sand down the parts that we're painting, get those primed. So here is my lovely fiance helping me sand down and prepare parts. So when you're sanding these down, it's good you go ahead and put the blue tape over the electronics if you don't want to completely remove those, and then the little lens that is over the purple light in the mouth area does not come off, as that is solvent welded in there with some glue. So you just put a little dab of tape over that, or a bit of poster putty, to make sure your primer doesn't cover up the clear. The first thing after priming is I put down a base coat of a dark brown. You can see it's a little different than the gray, not dark brown, a dark gray. You can see it's a little different color than the primer I put down. It's kind of the difference between old and new Lego gray. How Lego bricks used to have a more brownish gray, I guess, and then the new Lego has bluish gray. So I'm just putting down that base coat. Took about 2 or 3 coats just on all the painting surfaces. After that base color was down, I forgot to hit record on the part between there, which is I laid down painting masking tape for some of the details that I was wanting on there and the patterns. And after that I put on a light gray to look like a primer underneath that. And then I start going over those areas with the colors I want, which is the first is the red on the front edges of it. I also put down a lot of masking tape in torn up strips to kind of give it a nicer weather effect. So once those peel off, they'll reveal that gray underneath and it'll look really cool in the end. After that red goes on, I start putting white on these stripes that I have masked out on the top and bottom. Kind of give it a tied into the pirate ships from the newer Star Wars content. And it also kind of looks like maybe like ribs or something. So I wanted to go for more skeletal kind of theme on this one. And I really like painting with these makeup brushes. It helps get a nice smooth finish on there if you're working on something larger like this. It's also great for miniatures, for laying down some base colors. And it helps avoid some of the corners, so it helps you build up that depth with the color, with everything underneath it as well. Then I'm going over the red again with a brighter red, which is closer to the finish that I'd like on it. I did a couple of coats of that. It looks real vibrant and clean on there. Pull out some masking tape, and what I'm doing here is I'm wanting to mask out a little skull around the front of the eye, and there is that one molded panel around the eye that I'm using for most of that. And you can see putting it on there so that the white skull will continue over a bit of the red. So it looks like that was added, and the red was maybe some of the original paint before pirates got a hold of it. So they're just gonna graffiti the skull on top. Then I'm laying down some masking tape here, and I'm actually using the crease in the molded detail of the toy to guide the X-Acto knife around so that I can get a nice clean cut for the painting on there. I have a light gray base going down like the other detail areas that I did. Just takes a couple coats of that light gray. While we're waiting on the light gray to finish, I start doing some of the detail work. I'm laying down some black acrylic in some of the joints for the legs and other areas that I want to be darker undertones. I also do the area around the eye, because I want that to be nice and dark, and it'll help the rest of the color that I'm putting there pop in a bit later. Continuing with that, I am putting down some darker areas on some of these circuit boards. So that's the circuit part that goes on the underside of the inner mouth area. And there's a lot of fun details on that you can paint, because that really helps the prop like visually pop out. The original toy didn't have any detailing painted under there, but there's a lot of nice molding. With that gray dry, I just go ahead and do a couple coats of white over that skull area. You can see that's starting to come together with how it goes with the rib cage look. Alright, so with the base colors done, I get to one of the most satisfying parts of painting props is taking the masking tape off, because it's always so nice to see those nice clean crisp lines left behind as you peel the tape. It's like when you get a new bit of get you a new TV or something and you get to peel that protective film off of it, except this is so much better. You can see how nice the color patterns turned out there on the top, and then all those little torn bits that I'm taking off really make the paint chipping effect look really nice. Now there is paint chipping medium you can use. I have not personally used any of that myself, but it looks really cool. I just find that I haven't found any in the store, and I just have tons of this tape lying around, so it's a bit easier for me to work with that at the moment. I may start using some of that chipping medium on some miniatures though. So then the last base color here is the red on the underside of the wings. Just needs a couple layers of that before the primary goes on. And then I start using some black here to fill in the recessed parts of the circuit boards up top. As Anakin Skywalker would say, this is where the fun begins. Because I love getting to the details as my favorite part of painting projects. It's probably one of the reasons I like doing miniatures so much. But I am getting started on that. I like to use black for the recessed areas because it gives more of a depth to the inside of the droid, so you can imagine there's a bit more to it than what the plastic toy has molded. So you could imagine the dark areas on the real one would be giving you a look to the deeper insides of the droid. And then I start going over the legs and some of the other parts with a silver. Again, the makeup brushes are fantastic for a nice smooth finish, especially with metallics, since metallics can be so finicky sometimes. Again, the black that I put down earlier is really useful when going over it with a sponge, because the sponge can't get in all the little corners. So especially on that eyepiece, you can see the black left in the recesses really gives a nice depth to it. I start going around the outer edge with the silver and the sponge to add a little bit of a worn look to it, and this helps sell the idea that it's a metal and not just a plastic thing. And going over the inner circuit part after those eye lens pieces. And then this piece didn't take much painting. That's why I didn't show it much. It's just the upper part with the purple mouth light. Then the first main detail color I start doing here is a gold, and that is that's from Army Painter's Fanatics line, and the metallics for those are so good. Is my go-to for metallic paint now. They go on so smooth, and they don't take a lot of layers to get a nice finish. So being real careful with the gold here, making sure I go on the little side edges of the pieces I'm picking out, because I don't want to get too much onto that black, but I can always touch that up later since black is easy to work with. Just being real careful with a little brush. Then picking out some of the gold bits that I want on the underside of that circuitry. Then the main piece around the LED for the eye I wanted to be gold. Because, you know, he's a pirate, he's got to have some gold on him. The next part I do, I went ahead and did the silver on the circuitry under the wings. You can see that in the top corner. And then this part is a watered down mix of a couple of browns. I think it's a brown wash with a little bit of water and opaque color added. And then I'm just real carefully going through the panel lines with a very small brush. And I'm sorry it goes out of frame a bit more in this part. I like to hold the projects up close to my face when I'm doing some of the real fine detail work. I need to get a bit more of a angle set up for the camera on the workbench for those shots. So after going around with the brown in all the crevices and creases and little detail spots, I start going around and using a silver on all the chipped paint areas to make it look like there's metal underneath. But I don't fill it in all the way. I leave some of that gray on the edges. That way there's some layer, some paint layering, and it looks like more realistic chipping. It's really coming together right here. Then going around again, doing the same thing on the bottom piece. Couple of little scratches here and there. When you're doing metallics on larger pieces like this, it helps to kind of step back for a second and move it around so you can see how the light comes off of it. You don't want to go too overboard with weathering and scratches. There's like a little fine line you can figure out after you've been painting a while. It also kind of depends on what the project is. Like if you're painting something for Fallout, you probably want a lot more scratches and rust on there. But for a pirate Star Wars droid, I don't want to go too overboard. Then I start to use some of that metallic on a flat foam brush that just helps me get some of those straight edges a bit easier. And more of a speckling effect if I'm drawing it across. And be sure to get the little edges of the wings there. And I think I'll add a couple of scratches there. Alright, and the last bit of detail work before it gets a clear coat is one of my favorite paints, the Army Painter Rust Effect. And again, don't want to go too overboard with it, since this is not a post-apocalyptic prop. I'm going to have to buy some more when I start doing Fallout. I'm going to go through a lot of rust paint for that. I do have a Pip-Boy that I need to paint. I'll probably get around to that soon after I'm done with these Star Wars projects. But I am going around with that rust, just placing it in a few key spots. On top, I make sure I get around these little rivet shapes. Then on the bottom, just a couple spots where I think water might collect. And then to make him look a little more like he's gone through some impromptu repairs, I wanted one leg to look really worn out. So this one leg is almost completely covered in that rust. But I'm making sure to leave enough silver on the edges where it would rub more so that it stays clean. It really adds a nice depth and layer to it. Then go back on those little rivets to add just a little more once that first layer was dry, and then it's done. Alrighty, you can see here the painting is done. I think this turned out pretty good. I had a lot of fun with this weathering. So now I need to let this dry. I'm going to clear coat it once it is warm in the morning. And then I'll do some reassembly. Alright, I'm also going to change out the LED color. So let's go get that clear coated and reassemble. Alrighty. Behold the finished droid. So they went from this to this. So I went with a pirate theme inspired by the pirate ships from the Mandalorian and Skeleton Crew, because they all have that dark gray with light gray or white accent stripes. So I went with that. And then the fighters from the Mandalorian had a bit of red paint that was really scratched up on the front. So I wanted to try and do that on here. I did a lot of weathering on here. It was so much fun. Let's see. Yeah, I used ripped up bits of masking tape to help with the rough chipped corners of the red. Got some silver scratches here and there. Some Army Painter rust effect paint. That stuff I need to get more. I'm gonna go through it with how much I've been using it. He turned out so cool. I also changed the LED to red, and it doesn't show up too well. Yeah, you can see I scored the lens with a knife a bunch, so it looks like it's got a crack on there. So it doesn't show up as well as I'd like for that. I may go back over it with like a very thin white paint to put in the crack to just kind of make that pop out a little more. The LED has been changed to red. And I added some self-adhesive bandages to kind of make him look a little worn out. So he's got a little one on a leg and then his antenna. One leg is super rusty, so it's probably a replacement. He looks so cool. Also, he's kind of mean. Look at that. Look at him, got teeth. So the white part up here is meant to look like a pirate skull. So I had fun putting the teeth in there to pop up. He looks cool. I love him so much. We'll have to come up with a good name for him. We need like a good Star Wars-y pirate droid name. Polly is too cliche, I think. And I want to save, if anything, if any of the droids are being called Polly, it's probably going to be the ID9 Seeker droid I have over on the shelf. Because those are called parrot droids. But, I love how he turned out. See, the previous one I painted, I only did the top. Yeah, so I just did the top on that one because I wanted to see how well the paint would hold up, and also I like playing with these and taking them to work as little buddies on my desk. But this one I pretty much completely repainted. You see, the bottom of that one didn't get painted. The only thing I did not paint was the antenna and, oh yeah, the hinge for the wings on the inside. So the inside of the wings, I did do the circuitry, and I added gold because pirates need gold. And that accent really worked, I think, especially with the red color scheme. Like, it pops so well. The underside of the wings are red because I thought it'd be an interesting reference to how sailing ships, the inboard, so that's like the inside walls of the ship up on the top deck, as well as the underside of the hatches over the gun ports would be painted red. So I thought that would be a fun little nod towards that. Also, just looks really good on here. Like, I'm so happy with how he turned out. I love the teeth. He looks so mean. I tried to do a modification for the legs to come in and out, and with just the friction fit of the additional paint material, it was working fairly well, but then I realized there was nothing to grab if you wanted to open him up, because like you grab the legs and then you pull up like that, and without the legs I couldn't get him open. Like I could get like a fingernail or two in here and pulled him open, but then I think over time that'll be bad for the paint job. Oh, look at the teeth. He's so cute. Oh, we gotta come up with a good name. But yeah, thank you for watching me paint a pirate Star Wars droid. And yeah, this is probably the best one I've done. But I'm gonna knock that out of the park with the next one, because the next droid I do is probably gonna be a BD unit, and I have a cool paint scheme for that one. So yeah, if you want to see how to do the LED, check out the suggested video where I show you how to resolder that. It is super easy to do that. If you know how to solder, it is a real quick, like 5 minutes maybe, to change the LED color. Yeah. So, thanks for watching, and this has been Crafty Kobold. I will see you in the next video. I'm gonna go plunder some stuff.